of the races. In other words, some of our people go there and some of their people come here. Now, something surfaced not too long ago called Majestic 12 that dealt with government contact with aliens. A lot of people laugh at this document and think it's a hoax. Our research against the Bible would say that it is not a hoax, that this actually is legitimate and that contact has been made. Operation Majestic 12 is a top-secret research and development intelligence operation established by special classified executive order of President Truman. Now, this took place back some years ago. Very interesting, however, what Majestic 12 sets up. A rancher reported that a UFO had crashed in a remote region of New Mexico. Now, you might have even seen this replayed on Unsolved Mysteries. They ran a series on this. A secret operation was begun to assure recovery of the wreckage of this object. Aerial reconnaissance discovered that 4 small human-like beings had ejected from the craft. All 4 were dead. News reporters were given the effective story that the object had been a weather balloon. They are discounting the UFOs to the public while they gather the evidence secretly. The biological and evolutionary, there's your key, processes responsible for their development has apparently been quite different from those in Homo sapiens. Evolution is then a proven fact insofar as the government is concerned. They have accepted evolution as an established fact. The aliens then did not evolve as we did. This is the very basis of the grand delusion. It's creation versus evolution. Evolution is essential for the grand delusion because men reject the creation of the world and people by Jesus Christ. So it's very important you understand that evolution is the keynote. The ultimate intentions of these visitors is completely unknown, the report said. But if you read the Bible, you will know they are demons, and you will know they are the advanced guard of Satan, and that they are setting up the world for its final ruin and taking of people into eternal hell. UFOs are real. There's no question about that they are real. The only question is what are they? And if you take the evidence of the scriptures, definitely we believe here at least that they are the sons of God returning just exactly as they said they would, and all the occultic literature talks about this. Now there is an area out west called Area 51, Groom Lake. There's also Tonopah. There are several areas from which Project Red Light was developed. It's a top secret testing program for alien technology for defense purposes. This is very interesting that a lot of this stuff is being leaked right at this moment. As we get into this, a congressman said, I have no comment as to what is going on in Area 51. That was Congressman Harry Reid, and he went out there to visit the area because the Air Force had made a land grab, and he went out there on behalf of his constituents to find out why. It is said that President Eisenhower signed a treaty with actual aliens in 1957. The swap was they could take our people for experimentation and we would get technology in exchange. In other words, the aliens come to Earth, we take their technology to build our defense mechanisms. Now, a lot of people think this is ridiculous, but if you read what it says about Babylon the Great, the nation, it gets all of its technology from Satan. Satan is the one that gives them the power. And this is why the United Nations is being brought up. And this is why the United States is so deeply involved. In exchange for technology, the U.S. government agreed to allow the aliens to abduct humans for experiments. And this accounts for the large number of abductions reported all over America. This is part of the grand delusion which has evolution at the root of it. Now you have actually two options. All of the leaks of this type of information are disinformation, or it is real and the aliens really are here. The Bible evidence would be that it is real, the aliens are here, and that they are the advanced guard for Satan. He's programming the human race for this delusion, and it's based upon evolution. The sons of God of Genesis 6 have returned, as they said they would in occult writings. And Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so would it be again. And that's when the sons of God came down. So therefore, the agenda of Iron Mountain for external threat number 2 has been and is being carried out. Scientists are even going to the UN now to find out how are we going to answer these aliens from our SETI contacts at NASA. They believe the UN should do all of this. And so you see it elevates the United Nations to power. And this is very important. It's part of the Iron Mountain agenda. It might be argued that a well-armed international police force operating under the authority of such a supernatural court could well serve this purpose. In other words, they're going to set up another threat. This is threat number 3, actually, an omnipresent, virtually omnipotent political or police force. It's an international police force. Because remember, if we go into peace, we have to dissolve the nations, because war is the reason we have nations. All right, so the report then that was issued by the State Department, Freedom from War, and the program was to establish a permanent international peace force within the United Nations. In other words, to deliberately bring it up. The peacekeeping capabilities of the United Nations would be sufficiently strong, and the obligations of all states under such an arrangement sufficiently far-reaching as to assure peace and a just settlement of differences in a disarmed world. They're going to use the United Nations to keep the peace. In other words, a world government, which is exactly what Daniel talked about and Jesus talked about. And it is very deadly. During stage 2, states will develop further the peacekeeping processes of the United Nations to the end that the United Nations can effectively suppress any threat or use of force by anyone, and that would include the American people. It's going to be omnipresent, and it's going to be omnipotent in its ability to handle. And this is what Revelation says, who can make war with the beast? Remember that the U.S. and Russia are to have their internal or militaries turned over to the United Nations in this 3-stage process, and we end up with a UN in total control of the world, a global entity, precisely as Daniel and Revelation talk about. It's and Jeremiah and Isaiah refer to it as, of course, Babylon. And this process, of course, emerges bringing out the United Nations as the final end-time global ruling entity, which the Bible refers to as the apparatus of the Antichrist, or we could say the Antichrist system. And that is why it sits in New York City, the big city. On the wall in the Security Council is a phoenix. That picture you're looking at right there is in reality the phoenix bird, which is to grow up out of the old world order. America is to be patrolled by Russian, Belgian, Irish, and Colombian and Venezuelan troops under this plan. UN troops are already on U.S. soil, and it won't be very long before these sites that you're seeing right here are going to be very commonplace in the United States. And if the American citizens resist, they are simply going to be liquidated according to the Bible. This power will come to pass. They've laid their plans well. and God has ordained it and allowed it, and is allowing it to happen. And so it's, in reality, here in America, it's a judgment against the United States. There are many books written about a United Nations peace force, so this is not anything we're making up. They come in under the UN Charter. And the last part of it, this principle of non-interfering in a nation shall not prejudice the application of enforcement measures under Chapter 7. In other words, the United Nations claims that it doesn't really want to get involved in internal national affairs, but the opposite is in reality the truth. Chapter 7 deals with action with respect to threats of the peace, breaches of the peace, or acts of aggression. And it's the Security Council itself that determines the existence of a threat, breach, or act of aggression. And it can even walk in under the threat, or it's a possibility that we might have problems. And they determine the existence of any threat to the peace. So they can come in, if they choose to, on very fragile grounds, which is exactly what they did in Somalia. Should the Security Council consider that measures provided in 41, which are more economic, I don't know exactly what word to use, but sanctions, I guess, is the best word to cover it. If that doesn't work, if economic sanctions do not work, then they can resort to military powers. And they can use whatever they have to maintain or restore international peace. Now, Psalm 2 says that the kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. Where do the rulers of the world meet? They meet at the United Nations, and this is where they take their counsel together. And the United Nations is, according to the Bible, anti-Christ, anti-God to its very core. It is, in fact, the substitute for God and Christ on planet Earth. They intend to take it for themselves. The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and shall break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings. Now, it's a diverse kingdom. The United Nations is not a kingdom, and it's not a nation. It exists solely by treaty power, by an arrangement of nations itself. Excuse me. The United Nations is to be brought up to full global power with an army so powerful that none can fight against it. That's the entire plan, and that is exactly what the Bible talks about for the end times. It will also break into pieces the entire world, and that's done under Article 52, which deals with regionalism, which is in fact breaking the world into pieces. And this is how they do it. They actually subdivide the world into 10 regions. That came out of the Club of Rome, and here are the regions on the TV screen. Region 1, of course, is North America, and it's Region 1 by virtue of the fact that North America, and particularly the United States, is the primary power behind the United Nations, enabling this to happen. The United States itself is broken down into 10 federal regions. We have global regions, and now we have national regions. And in our country, they are simply called federal regions. And we're moving, in effect, from elected officials to appointed officials to non-elected bureaucrats who are appointed. Now, each region has different states in it, and the number of states varies with each particular region. Then each state is subdivided up into its particular regions. Many times it falls along county lines, many times it doesn't. Overlapping all of it is, of course, grids that keep getting smaller and smaller, which is the reason why thousands or millions, actually, of Americans are getting address changes. They're going under the United Nations grid system, which divides the world into tiny pieces, which is exactly what Daniel said. They worry that the object had been a weather balloon. They are discounting the UFOs to the public while they gather the evidence secretly. The biological and evolutionary, there's your key, processes responsible for their development has apparent of the races. In other words, some of our people go there and some of their people come here. Now, something surfaced not too long ago called Majestic 12 that dealt with government contact with aliens. A lot of people laugh at this document and think it's a hoax. Our research, again, they ran a series on this. A secret operation was begun to assure recovery of the wreckage of this object. Aerial reconnaissance discovered that 4 small human-like beings had ejected from the craft. All 4 were dead. News reporters were given the effective stance the Bible would say that it is not a hoax, that this actually is legitimate and that contact has been made. Operation Majestic 12 is a top-secret research and development intelligence operation established by special classified executive order of President Truman. Now, this took place back some years ago. Very interesting, however, what Majestic 12 sets up. A rancher reported that a UFO had crashed in a remote region of New Mexico. Now, you might have even seen this replayed on Unsolved Mysteries.